Carrie's an attorney by profession, a trial attorney. I'm a nurse practitioner. We were introduced to LifeWave technology by my dear friends, Mark and Catherine, and I've known them for many years. And Catherine very gently sort of nudged me into listening to her about LifeWave, and I'm going to be forever grateful because she did. 4.5 years ago now, March of 2018, Carrie was in basically a fatal motorcycle accident. Somebody ran a red light when he was just about to enter an intersection, and he hit the side of a car going 50 miles an hour. So his body went from 50 miles an hour down to zero in 0.02 seconds. And the calculated G-forces that we've had a couple of engineer friends of ours calculate out for us is that the G-forces that his body sustained was 113 G-forces. And according to the Air Force, a body can withstand 42, I believe, 42 or 44, I've forgotten now, 42 G-forces. And one of our general friends from the Air Force told us that pretty much the only time he has seen anything over that was in airplane crashes. And not to be too graphic, but they pretty much picked up pieces of people in buckets if they sustained more than that. So the fact that he's even alive is just by the grace of God and a pure miracle. His injuries are numerous, so I'll give you a quick rundown of those. At the scene, he wasn't breathing, and so. And
you were right behind him.
I was on my motorcycle behind him. Sorry. And by the way, we don't ride motorcycles anymore, but I was on my motorcycle behind him, and so he wasn't breathing at the scene, and so thankfully I knew how to take care of that, and I opened his airway and whatnot until EMS got there. So at the scene, he had what's called a hemothorax. His lung was full of blood instead of air. And so they had to put a tube in to fix that and let the blood out. He had what's called a flail chest, which is when your ribs are cracked or broken in multiple places, each rib, so that there's no structure supporting. Your rib cage supports all of your organs inside your chest, and those were broken. So he had, I'll probably look at my list here. All of the ribs on the right side were broken, several of them or multiple of them in numerous places. 50% of the ribs on the left were broken. He had 3 pelvic fractures. 4 of his vertebrae were broken. His right thumb was broken. Left hand was crushed. And the report said with fragments too numerous to count. Right shoulder blade was fractured, right acromion fracture, right tibia fracture, a torn ACL, torn meniscus. He had liver laceration, total organ system failure. So every organ in his body shut down. He's on dialysis because his kidneys shut down. He had ARDS, which you guys are probably familiar with. That's adult respiratory distress syndrome, which is what we have heard of with COVID. So your lungs don't expand. They get stuck together like that, and they can't expand, so you can't breathe. So he had ARDS. He did a whole lot of soft tissue damage, liver failure, everything else. He had to have 30 to 40 units of blood, and you only have like 6 units of blood in your whole body. So he had 30 or 40 replaced. Multiple surgeries. His GI system was paralyzed. He had pneumonia 3 separate times. He was pretty much a mess. They gave him medicine to raise his blood pressure, and then the same day they would give him medicine to lower his blood pressure. He had to have his heart shocked. He was pretty much a disaster. For 6 weeks, he was on a ventilator and in a coma, and daily they told me that he wasn't going to live. But he did, by God's grace. So those were his injuries.
So where was he
So-
at coming out of the hospital, like mobility and ability wise, and just here up until 8 weeks ago?
Okay, so sure. When he came out of his coma, he couldn't move any part of his body. He couldn't move his hands. He couldn't move anything. And he had to be taught how to do all of that again.
Right.
Every single ADL, he had to be retaught how to do, walk and everything. So by the time he got out of the hospital, he could walk a little bit with a walker. He was mostly in a wheelchair. We did some house modifications for him, and he did physical therapy for well over a year. And so he progressed, and to the point that he could walk, but he walked with a cane 100% of the time and used his walker part of the time, every day to get out of bed. And then some of the time during the day. If he had the rain like we've had today, he would be on the couch all day from the pain. He was in pain 100% of the time, whether he was awake or not. I'm a light sleeper. I heard him moaning all night long. Every time he turned over, he would moan. So he was in pain continuously. He couldn't do any of the things he could do. Our life, we're very athletic and outdoors type people. And that pretty much ended because he could no longer do it. And right before Mark and Catherine introduced us to LifeWave, we were pretty much still at that point. He was very frustrated, quite frankly. He would say to me, I'm looking at him, not sure if I'm supposed to say this. He would say to me, I don't even know why God bothered to save me if I'm going to be in this much pain all of the time. And I would just tell him that obviously God had a purpose. And then Mark and Catherine introduced us to this. And within a week and a half, he had some other issues, like he has a longstanding high blood pressure and cholesterol issues. And within a week and a half, his blood pressure was coming down already. And
After the patches.
After the patch, right, after we started the patches. The first day he put the patch on, he told me he felt tingling, which I thought he was crazy because I felt nothing for over 3 weeks. I felt nothing at all. But he felt this tingling. And then within a week and a half, his blood pressure was coming down, and I decreased his medicine since that's what I do for a living. And then he started saying his shoulder was feeling a little bit better. And within about 3 weeks, his shoulder, right rib, and right scapular pain were gone, just totally gone. And then, but he complained that his hip and pelvis and back were still bothering him. And he was still using his cane and everything. And then his blood pressure started coming down some more. So now it's down to the point where he's only taking a third of the medicine he was taking. And within the last month, his hip and pelvis pain and low back pain have resolved. So he has not used his cane with at all in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 weeks, except one time when he was overdoing it because he felt so good and he pulled a muscle in his back. But that's the only day. Other than that, he's pretty much normal. I mean, normal, back to normal. And it's not like he goes out and runs, but he didn't like to do that anyway. But he can walk and not have pain now.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
So 4.5 years of full body excruciating pain, immobility, lack of ability. Carrie, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say excruciating some days, but it was especially rainy days. I was on the couch because I actually had 41 fractures,
I forgot that part.
not 41 bones because the ribs were broken 2 and 3 times, but 41 fractures. And with that many broken bones, it was nonstop, and I couldn't sleep on my right side, and I'm right-handed. And that's what I was using just a couple of hours ago. I'm looking at the clock. 2 hours ago, I was fixing a fence, hammering with my right hand, bending down, and that's something I haven't been able to do for 4.5 years.
So tell me, I want to know what patches have you used, and where are you using them?
I'm using the X39 and the Eon. Right.
Where
I had
do
a
you-
lot of inflammation and all of my joints, from my knee up through my shoulder, lower back. I broke 4 lumbar vertebra and the pelvis in 3 places. And every one of those areas I had pretty much continuous pain. And I suppose you guys know much more about the science than I do, but I suppose the Eon reduced the inflammation in those areas.